My name is Bulelwa Mabasa. I am a member of the advisory panel on land reform that has been tasked to advise the president, the deputy president, and the inter-ministerial committee on land reform. The date is the 8th of December 2018, and we are at the Birchwood Conference Center this morning. The What we have done this morning is that we have recapped what had come out of 4 work streams that discuss various issues yesterday. So yesterday, there was a group and a work stream that looked at beneficiary selection, so which beneficiaries would benefit from land reform, and who also looked at potential compensation models for land reform. In other words, how do we come up with a model for compensation from zero to all the way through to potentially above market for land reform purposes. There was then another group that dealt with agricultural and funding models for land reform. They looked at how land reform could be funded away from just being only a state focus, but one that will involve private sector stakeholders. And also the issue around what are the models that we should be looking for agriculture. There is talk of a more unified vision, general vision for an agrarian revolution, if you like, that will make sure that farming is something that is not only placed within the minority, but that all categories of black farmers should be supported by the government. And that there are programs to support anyone, any beneficiary that receives land from government. Another work stream, which I became a part of, looked at urban issues around land reform. And what came out of there is that it is high time that as a country, we have a unifying vision around what we do with land, not just farming or agriculture. There was also an understanding that when we talk about land reform, we shouldn't create distinctions between rural and urban, but that we see them as complementing one another, that we need to start recognizing the tenure rights of people whose rights are not sitting with the deeds registry. For example, people who live in rural areas with permissions to occupy, and people who are urban people who are living in different human settlements but without any legal recognition for that. So we should look at tenure across the board, both rural and urban, and say what types of legal protection and system are we going to use to make sure that people are entitled to have some kind of protection. We debated issues around whether or not we should be looking at ownership, freehold title, whether we're looking at title deeds or we're looking at a more inclusive forms in which rights will be protected. Another work stream also looked then into the rural specific issues to say communal tenure and communal land, we have many lessons to draw from those, that there are many benefits, that system has been resilient, that people have understood it, and that it incorporates cultural and lived experiences, but that we must be able to use those tenure rights to be registrable and to be capable of legal protection. And in all of those, one thing that became clear is that we need to look at the institutional arrangements in terms of who is that body that is ultimately responsible for surveying land, finding out what our land registration is, finding out what land is where and what could it be used for, but also finding out how citizens could now begin to benefit with one unified vision. There was a talk of having to come up with a white paper that will stop the fragmentation that is currently happening, because land is dealt with by different departments, by different institutions, with no single vision. So an issue of institutional arrangement. There was no issue about a land administration system that must now start to take the fall, because we haven't had land administration in a coherent and integrated manner. So what happened this week then was to recap, and there were some recommendations that came from all the top institutions, and that today today there's going to be another presentation by the Acting Director General from the Department of Land Reform and Rural Development, who will zoom into the issue of redistribution. Before, the focus was on restitution, people who lost rights, improve their rights. Now we're looking at refocusing on Section 25, Section 5, which talks about the need for land, and that need for land is not only concentrated on agrarian, but that it's a need for land across the spectrum.